Hello and welcome to Fintech Chatter, brought to you by Tier 1 People, leaders in Fintech executive search. I'm your host, Dexter Cousins. Today's guest is Brenton Charnley, Australia-New Zealand CEO for TrueLayer. Through their open banking platform, TrueLayer enables fintech like Revolut and Stake to build better financial experiences for their customers. TrueLayer officially launched in Australia last week, announcing a funding round led by Tiger and Stripe, which now gives them unicorn status. Brenton shares his plans for the Australian business, talks you through the differences between open banking and Australia's CDR, and he shares some great insights on hiring and building teams. Brenton's also got some great advice for anybody looking to break into fintech, and he shares his thoughts on the qualities that leaders look for. Brenton, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Dexter.
It's fantastic to finally have you on. We've known each other an awful long time.
We have.
But I thought for the benefit of our listeners who don't know you or what might not know you, do you want to share with them a little bit about who you are and how you got into fintech?
Yeah, absolutely. It was certainly not the right path that some people might think of, but and getting into fintech's a little bit different. I had a consulting background with the Big Four, and I'm a chartered accountant. And as I was going through that journey, really got into kind of innovation and startups and passion about that. And was fortunate enough my segue was moving into a head of innovation role at a big insurance company. And that's how I got into InsurTech first. And then that part gave me an opportunity to work with an InsurTech company called Flamingo. And then was fortunate to join Cover Genius very early on with Angus and Chris. And from there, I've joined TrueLayer. So it's been an interesting path over the last 7 years, working in both InsurTech and FinTech.
Fantastic. Can you tell our listeners a little bit more about TrueLayer and what you do?
Yeah, TrueLayer's kind of vision is about opening up finance, and we do that through technology. We're an open banking platform, and we use APIs to effectively connect to banking pipes, if you think about the way, the APIs. And we connect the banks with tech companies like Revolut or Stake to help them offer services, essentially open banking services to their customers. So we're the smart pipes that do all the connections and help these big, awesome tech companies to be able to serve their consumers.
So what would you say is and we hear this a lot, here in Australia, we've got the equivalent of open banking, which is CDR. What's the kind of big vision or big opportunity that TrueLayer sees in this space?
Ultimately, it's about changing benefit for the consumer, right? Financial services being very hard, very complex, multiple players, and very big companies perpetuating kind of existing business models. And the opportunity for TrueLayer is to simplify that with technology, to improve access to your data, as well as access to new payment rails. We call it data-enabled payments is the segue of both of those. It's the intersection whereby you can use your data online, particularly when and how you want to. So, for example, applying for a new mortgage, or essentially just using your banking data to do an onboarding process. Or it might be getting some insights on your spending. It might be pulling down transaction information. And then on the payment side, it's using that to essentially revolutionize and change the way we pay online. That is, we're so accustomed to using cards. We all float around and endeavor to remember our PIN number and our CVC and our PAN, the 16-digit number on the front. And ultimately for merchants, that results in bad outcomes. They lose customers in the checkout. It's more expensive, and it costs them in many different ways. And we see the big opportunity is open banking payments, which is where you can transfer money from your bank account very simply online, an account-to-account payment. So we're very excited about the intersection of both of these, but particularly the future for payments using open banking.
TrueLayer has kind of got I guess, a step ahead of the local players here in Australia, in that you've been around from the kind of beginning of PDS2 and in the UK and the open banking regime. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about the origins of TrueLayer and kind of what how the business kind of got started?
Yeah, absolutely. Two founders, great mates, Francesco and Luca, both Italian, founded the company in 2016, really as open banking was coming to the fore under PSD2 regulations. They made some very difficult decisions at the start, which was very much about doing open banking API first. So not going near the traditional screen scraping type interactions that was helping in financial services. So they've been very true to that. And they've also been very true to building an amazing developer experience. So making it excellent for devs to access the APIs, great console, great experience, which means it makes it really easy for tech companies to do this. And ultimately, it was a vision to change financial services. We call it opening up finance, but it's actually about making it much more simpler and easy for people to access. And it's great to see that vision for them play out. We had our 50-year anniversary this year, and for them to now see what we're doing here in Australia, as well as across 15 other markets, them rolling out these products.
Now, in terms of, I guess, the actual differences between open banking and CDR, could you give a little bit of insight into that and what you're seeing kind of happening in the UK versus what the opportunity might be here in Australia?
Yeah, they're similar, but they're not the same, of course. So the consumer data right is the overarching regulations that is about enabling the consumer to be able to have greater control over their data in a first circumstance with financial institutions as well as other institutions. So if you think about, you've got these relationships with these financial institutions where you've got their transaction data and history. It's very hard to get that information out, which you either download PDF bank statements or you need brokers or essentially intermediaries to access that information. The same thing plays out across other verticals or industries like telecommunications, insurance, energy are some sectors that they're looking at. And to say, well, similar to banking, you should be able to move and port your data around to be able to get a better service, increase competition and consumers. So what Australia has done under the consumer data right, or is proposing to do by Treasury, is to do a multi-sectoral view to really open up your data or consumers' data. In the UK, it's been really focused on open banking, which is why we've got these different terminologies, but ultimately banking is the first place we're starting in Australia and the UK. The UK is moving towards much more of an open finance mentality where they're looking at opening into different verticals as well. So different paths to get to a similar thing. The UK does have payments now, which is why we're doing so many payments in the UK through open banking, and we don't yet have payments in Australia.
Okay. So big week this week for you, and that it's actually the official launch for Australia. What's the kind of strategy that TrueLayer has, or the thinking that they have around the Australian market, and why is it attractive to them?
Yeah, so we came to Australia because of a number of factors. As an open banking API first company, the first and foremost is the regulations. The consumer data right is really facilitating and mandating the banks to give us access to consumers' data through APIs. That's the first and foremost. The second, in the fintech ecosystem, is amazing, right? We love fintech and love helping fintech companies, and it's no longer a space where fintech is over in one corner and financial services is in another. So that was a big thing for TrueLayer, that there was an ecosystem here. And the opportunity, financial services in Australia, some of the highest margin products sit here in Australia. So a real opportunity for TrueLayer to come in with technology and really help change the market and to work with players to do so that here in Australia. And similarly, a lot of similarities between UK and Australian market. We have customers that are in the UK that have businesses in Australia, and vice versa with Australian fintechs going out to UK and European markets as well.
And so now with you having your presence here in Australia, what are some of the lessons that TrueLayer in the UK has learned that can be applied here in Oz?
Yeah, so the first is merchant first.
What do you mean by that?
Yeah, so open banking, and I'm not sure you as a consumer, Dexter, but a lot of people haven't heard of it, right? Which is people don't go out and wake up and think, "Hey, I want to go do open banking today." They don't actually say that.
Yeah.
They say, "I want to get a better experience. I want to make this simpler. I want to take time away. I want to do something that's cheaper." But ultimately, people are looking for something that's better choice or better price, right? Ultimately, with these products, and the people who deliver that are tech companies and merchants. So merchants are the ones that need to start engaging with open banking systems, and that's where TrueLayer comes in as an intermediary. We provide the technology to enable them to embed and utilize open banking so they can deliver better products for consumers. So that's the first. Ultimately, you have to do that. If consumers aren't using it, then ultimately no one ends up using it. I think from a developer experience, that's really important. Ultimately, there's an engineer and a PM sitting on the other side of us integrating our products. And so making it really easy for them to be able to do that. So we're really investing in that space. We've got a whole product team called DevX, developer experience, who are really focused on improving our products and tools to make it easier. And there's a lot of synergies between Stripe, how Stripe did it in terms of publishing really simple APIs, and what TrueLayer is doing for open banking.
Okay. Now you talked there about it being the consumer data, right? How, one of the frustrations that I've got is, being around the industry, all the discussions that I hear seem to be centered on legislation. At what point do you think the focus needs to shift within the industry to consumers and actually creating better products and creating more choice, as you talked about there in the UK?
I think where we are at with the consumer data, right, and open banking more broadly is, there's nerdy people like me getting really excited about the legislation and things. And it's an important period to get right because it does set the rules of the game that we're going to play. And you can't change the game in financial services without changing the rules. So there's a lot of people that are involved, from the consumer advocacy groups to the banks, to intermediaries, to industry associations. There's a lot of opinion. So that's why we're still in this space. And it's important to get it right because we know that what Treasury and the government has done is looked at the UK and think through, well, how can we do it better? And that's why, for example, the CDR exists, because the UK started with banking and finance and didn't think about the other verticals or sectors. It's not just about consumer choice in getting a mortgage. It's about consumer choice in other products as well. So that's a big fundamental difference. And the breadth of it is making it difficult. Where we are now, we're seeing open banking APIs coming to be more competitive and mainstream with existing measures, such as screen scraping, to be able to provide these products to consumers. Ultimately, it's taken time. The banks have had to build their APIs. They have to be compliant, and players like TrueLayer have to get in the market as well to be able to connect to those and provide them to our customers. So there's a bit of time, but we're not too far away in terms of making it and delivering value for consumers. And back to our lessons, it's ultimately that merchants need to deliver that product to their consumers. They need to change the customer experience and deliver them a better outcome using open banking, rather than waiting for their consumer to say, hey, can you use open banking? That's just not going to happen.
So a couple of weeks back, I was on the 11FS podcast. Matt Baxby from Revolut was on as well, and he kind of made made the point that for a lot of overseas fintech coming here to Australia, there's a fair amount of adaptation that needs to happen to be relevant to the market here. So it's not just a case of picking up what worked in the UK and hoping it's going to work here in Oz. What is the opportunity that TrueLayer sees in here, and how do you think the kind of product offering might be different from what you've got in the UK?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I'll talk about our product in a couple of different ways. The first is that TrueLayer's value proposition is really to global tech companies, people with multi-market ambitions or current products. That's where TrueLayer particularly overserves.
We've got some examples of clients that you've worked with.
Yeah, so Revolut's a great one you talked about, Matt. Revolut use us across Europe and UK and multiple markets, and because they can integrate our payment and data APIs to be able to access essentially the banks and payment rails in multiple markets through single integration. So that's where we really endeavour to offer the differentiator for our product. So that maintaining and ensuring the simplicity of the APIs is difficult, and we're doing that across multiple markets in parallel. Then we've got, in terms of localizing that for Australia, for example, that's where the connectors come in. So the simplest way is, we need to plug into multiple banks. We aggregate all of their pipes into our backend, and then we deliver that through one pipe to our consumers and merchants, I should say, our customers. And so that's our job to get ahead of that. So to that point around kind of localizing the API, there's some simple changes in terms of your sort code in terms of the UK versus the BSB here in Australia, as an example. Those sorts of differences, but ultimately a lot of the abstraction and complexity sits behind and for us to sort out as opposed to our consumers. So, for example, like another company like Stake, we're working with them in the UK, Australia share trading platform, helping consumers get access to the US market. Similarly, they're looking to us and saying, we want to have access to the similar rails in different markets. So our job's to go ahead of that and build the connections and make them reliable and make them sustainable.
We've seen a lot of the kind of lines blur. I mean, you've come from the insurtech industry and kind of fintech more broadly. If I look at our client portfolio, we've got a whole different mix of businesses in there. Many of them not financial services companies who now want to offer financial products. What's TrueLayer seeing from their kind of purview as to just what is possible and kind of this philosophy that every tech company can become a fintech? Do you think that's actually true?
That was the quote that I was thinking about as you're asking this question. It's definitely possible. What I'd say is open banking makes that easier. It's definitely the empowering technology. The reason being, previously, in order to get access to that, you would need to use alternate technology we talked about before, but you typically need to be within the realms of financial services, right? And technology really helps the value chain to be crossed. It brings things from one sector into another sector, and that's the perfect definition of a fintech. The example here is let's take the insurance sector versus banking. The use case could be that you can apply for sign up for a policy with an insurance company, but you connect your bank account to pull in your identity information as well as some financial information to make that a faster experience. Now, that's open banking applied in an onboarding use case. But you're trusting that insurance company to say, look, I just want to use my banking data that I've got through a secure way to make my life simpler when applying for a policy. Simple use case, but that's using open banking in a whole new sector in itself. The same thing could play out in the e-commerce sector, where people are using our verification API to onboard to verify their bank account to sign up for an account. So previously that would take a couple of days, whereas they can do that in a couple of seconds.
And a PDF.
or a PDF upload. Yeah. So the application of it in different industries is really exciting. So one thing I think is promising in Australia is, before we go too broad through the consumer data, right, it's actually about saying who are the other verticals and industries, and this is where TrueLayer comes into it, who can use open banking data and payments to better their customer experiences, to change the way that consumers engage with their products, and to do it in a secure and easy way.
There always seems to be some frustration with the kind of progress that's made and whether it's happening fast enough. I'd say that's been the message I've heard from the UK, and it's a message that I hear from my network here in Oz. What's your view of kind of the pace at which open banking and CDR is progressing, And when do you think we'll kind of start to see some real benefits and impact on the industry?
Depends what perspective you're looking at. So I think if you'd been involved in the industry, like some people have, well before I got involved in open banking, this has been going on for 4 years. In the UK, it went for 7 years. You need to appreciate that changing the rules of an incumbent industry for a long time takes a lot of effort. As I said, there's a lot of opinions, a lot of insights, and a lot of things to consider to make sure, number one, we're protecting the consumer, and we're very conscious of that. So you're dealing with people's monies, you're dealing with people's identity, you're dealing with people's privacy. And so I think it is important. I think, can things be done quicker? Yes. But is it important that we get this right? And I think the story that played out in the UK with payments was a great example. It's not just about opening up these APIs. It's, are they reliable? Can they be trusted? Getting them in front of consumers, iterating and trying. And I think this is where we are in Australia now. We need to see more use cases. And I think 2023, 2022, more so 2022, we're going to see some great use cases coming to market and seeing consumers interact. I'd love to see the government, the Australian government, come out and put a mandate in place that we want to see, I think, 1 million consumers using it by the end of 2022. But I think more reality would be great to see about 500,000. But ultimately, I think as an industry, we all need to work towards some common goals, which is about consumers using open banking to deliver better products.
Big news this week with the official launch of TrueLayer Australia. Even bigger news last week. Do you want to share that with our listeners?
Yeah, we're very pleased. 6 months after our Series D, we're pleased to announce our Series E with $100 million, $130 million US raise with Tiger Global leading and with Stripe participating in the round. And it's really about bringing open banking mainstream.
Okay, but Stripe's a payments business. Why have they invested in TrueLayer?
Yeah, so this is the big part of TrueLayer's business across UK and Europe, and hopefully soon to be here in Australia is our payments products. Open banking payments, we've touched on them a little bit earlier, but it's about account-to-account payments and really challenging cards online. And fundamentally, cards weren't built for online purchases, and open banking is here. Open banking payments is being used. We've got a great use case. We're working with a platform called Kazoo, which is an online e-commerce car marketplace. And not only can you find your car, inspect it and deal with it, but you can also do the transaction online. So you can use open banking to transfer the money from the seller from the purchaser to the seller. That's all done using open banking instantly. So you don't have that awkward, hey, can I have the check? Can I have the key? Can I have the keys?
Yeah.
This is all done online. It's all instant. The seller would be able to see the money in their account. It's done with strong customer authentication, so there's no fraud. So amazing use cases, and we're doing a lot across crypto platforms and wealth tech, particularly where previously the card merchant fees or interchange fees were very high. So, for example, Stakers and Revolut are using our payments APIs to help consumers get money easily into their account so they can go and do something with it.
And I've got to say, that's the biggest kind of frustration that I've got is, it's my money. Why is it that I have to take 4 days to invest in something that I want to invest in, which particularly when the markets move so fast, right? It's a major frustration. Absolutely.
And one of our products that we launched really on the back of this was really has seen a significant growth. It's called Pay Direct, and that enables us to verify your account instantly, check the account to make sure it's yours, get money in instantly into the share trading platform or crypto platform, so that marketplace or platform can then go deal with those and buy your crypto or shares instantly.
Yeah.
And then to be able to pay out hopefully your winnings on the back of that. Depends on the variation, but huge product, and it's making a significant impact.
What was it that got you kind of really, I guess, committed to taking on this role and being the person that was going to launch TrueLayer in Oz?
The first was the empowerment that I encountered, right? Just the sense of energy and how I was going to be treated and enabled to do my work. And, working with Marie in that process, who was running the business here in Australia and across APAC, and also the connection with the rest of the team. And we had this conversation on an interview last night, which was about, we had this barbecue conversation, and then the other one was about what's it like to work at TrueLayer. And one of our heads of products talked about the fact that he genuinely gets to work with incredibly intelligent people who are very creative, but are incredibly kind, that care about what you do, and that you can have difficult conversations about a topic, about how to do a certain product or whether to go into a certain industry or any of the technical things that we work on. But that person cares about you, that you don't feel put down, you're not criticized, that you're trusted and empowered to do your job. And that's what I got when I joined, and I can say that's exactly how it's played out. And that's the environment that I'm creating here in Australia as well with the rest of the team, which is a place that you feel safe. And a great example is, TrueLayer, we've got an amazing benefit that on top of your already very generous leave benefits, we get 1 day a month, 12 days a year of mental health days. We call them mental health and wellbeing days. You can take those with no approval. You can just take a time off. And I tell the team when I'm taking these days, because I want the team to know that it's okay, number one, to take them. Number two, that you need to take a break, that you need to switch off. And it's not about being sick, I've got a cold. It's actually about acknowledging, saying we work really hard. And it's creating a safe environment where people can do that. And ultimately, for me, we spend so much time doing things and creating things to change the future of financial services that I can't do everything. I'm not across everything. So I need to have people around me that I trust, and I can empower them to go and do great things themselves. It's not just about me or the founders of the business. And there's no way, if the two founders were trying to micromanage what I do here in Australia, that it would work, right? That's not the culture they want to create. It's not the culture that we create at all. So ultimately, it's about creating a safe environment. We talked about transparency and about how we achieve that, and helping people to come to work, to feel trusted and empowered to do the things that they love to do.
So what does the raise mean for TrueLayer here in Australia?
Yeah, so as a team, we're growing, which is really exciting. So, with all tech startups, you need people. And that's primarily what we're looking to do. We're building across all of our functions, product and engineering, of course, commercial, compliance and regulatory, marketing, sales, operations, finance, people, the whole lot. So that's the first and foremost. It really, really bolsters that. And the ability to be able to go and do some great deals with Australian and global businesses. It really puts us in a position, with people like Tiger and Stripe behind us, and not just that group, our previous investors as well. It really sets us apart and says, look, TrueLayer is a key player on a global scale, and we're doing some great things.
You and I have talked for many years, probably 5 years now. Or one of the biggest discussions we've always had has been around culture and leadership and hiring, and the kind of the challenges of being able to build high performance teams in scaling businesses. What would you say is your approach to the kind of culture that you're trying to build for TrueLayer here in Australia?
Yeah, I've thought about this one kind of coming in part of it and kind of a building team. And the reality for us is, and I think all tech companies at the moment is, since I've joined TrueLayer, we've doubled in size. We've gone from about 120 to 300 people, I think, this week. And the reality with that, most people are in UK and Europe, and we've got a number of people here that no one's kind of met each other. That interaction of culture, which is, hey, everyone needs to be in the office, and the ping pong table stuff that everyone talks about, and the bean bags and things that people thought were cool, it isn't really important. And so TrueLayers, we've really rethought about how do we bring culture into a different space as a tech company. What do we need? The pandemic's really made us rethink it. So there's two aspects to the cultural piece, which is about creating a workplace and what does that new workplace look like. And so TrueLayer, we've worked on what we've called a future of work policy, which is to say, look, the default will be remote with in a target of 12 days in the office on a quarterly basis. But we've supercharged that by saying we're going to give each team and each individual a budget to co-locate and connect. So
Right.
that idea with that, across Australia, we can have team members. People can essentially get together and work out, hey, in the product team, we want to go down and visit one of the team members for a week. Great, go and do that and co-locate with them, do your workshops, do your strategy sessions, have a good time. So that's independent of like a business travel budget or things like that where you need to do kind of business meetings. So it's about saying we're dedicating money not just into a space, we're dedicating money into enabling people to connect. And we just, mandating that we're doing, at least 2 or 3 all hands where we get together throughout the year. And then also just providing people with great tools like the best laptops they can get, screens and stuff around their own workspace to be able to do that. So that's kind of like the workplace. And the tools are really important. So we're a default Slack tool company. And so we hardly get any emails from anyone in the business. Everything's done on Slack. All the Slack channels are open. You can join, you can see what's going on across. Obviously, there's some confidential things that not everyone's part of, but primarily all the Slack channels are open, which is great. And I knew when I joined the business, I just wanted to be connected and to see what was going on, and you can interact, you can, really engage with things.
Yeah, and look, I've been part of those Slack channels, hiring for TrueLayer as well. So it really is a very kind of open and transparent culture that the business has. Yeah,
absolutely, and that's really set by Farah and Luca themselves. What we share in terms of the all hands, everything's recorded, and we do have a culture that we've kind of leveraged a bit from the Amazon model, where instead of having presentations where you rock up to a meeting and if you miss the meeting, for example, Australia UK time isn't great in terms of missing kind of all hands and things. People invest time in building and writing narrative-based documents. And this is a big change, which means that if you've missed something, people can share you the document and you can read the rich context. So someone's written it down in words rather than dot points on a page or a picture where you miss that out. So even that as a cultural tool is really helpful to make sure that people are connected. And from an onboarding cycle, it means that I can share the history of the last 12 months of TrueLayer Australia. And within a week, someone can be up to speed with all the knowledge and the information that I've developed and written down and the team has built to really help them get onboarded. So that kind of inclusiveness from the start is really important.
Now, all of the benefits that you're offering this approach that you've got to work, it's brilliant, but I'm sure it would appeal to pretty much every single person on the planet. You're a really selective organization. I've worked closely with TrueLayer, and they absolutely are a business that is focused on hiring tier 1 people. How do you go about hiring great people?
It's a great question. Work with you, Dexter. I think that's the first. I could not say that one. First and foremost, I think the network is obviously really important. But I've been in fintech for some time, but I certainly don't kind of know everyone or not connected to everyone. And what you also realize that I'm primarily a commercial person, so most of my network tends to be in that space. So as we're looking at working in product and engineering and different tools. You need a different network as well. So what I'd say that's kind of the first part to start with. But then the second is through my network, bring in the people that you know and trust to begin with. And then work with them to find the great talent. That's something that I've done. For me, in terms of even with TrueLayer's brand and profile, like we're still building, a lot of people don't know who TrueLayer is yet in Australia. But even with that and the great benefits and features, people have to be interested in the work. And we had a question in an interview recently, which was, when you rock up to your barbecue, or not so much at the moment with the current lockdown situation, but and people ask you what you do, what do you say? Tell them at kind of TrueLayer, like what do you do? And being in a B2B kind of open banking API company, you can't really roll that one out to people because people are like, okay, I don't understand what that is. So, typically we then talk about how we're enabling and empowering our clients. So what they're doing. So, for example, Revolut, a lot of people have interacted with, or platform like Free Trade or Kazoo in the UK. And then people get those kind of use cases. And for me, in terms of hiring great people, I'm looking for people who have made an active decision to change what the future looks like, and have done so and invested their own time and energy to go ahead and do this. To work in a tech startup isn't just about going, oh, hey, it's cool because it's the coolest thing. I want to go work in fintech. Like, you genuinely have to be nerded out and passionate about what you're doing, and active, and I'm saying active again, in going and achieving that. So a great thing for me is when I look at profiles, it's not about a flat 2-page piece of paper. I'm looking for the depth of someone's character and activity and in terms of what they've done over an extended period of time.
Mate, one of my bugbears is when I get resumes, and it's probably about 99% of them talk about interests which are actually just basic human functions: walking, cooking, it's like, come on, reading, it's like, come on, breathing, swimming. It's crazy, right? That you think, here's your opportunity to just put some words down to show what you're passionate about. Obviously, the resumes, a bit like cards, was built for a completely different world that we live in. What about things like LinkedIn profiles and kind of online presence? What tips have you got for people there?
Yeah, I think this is a brilliant one. Like, I genuinely don't look at a lot of CVs, and unfortunately that's where the kind of it's set up. Shoot me your CV, I'll have a look at it, and ultimately. But what I'd say, LinkedIn's a fantastic tool. But what I'd also say is, LinkedIn's just a representation of your career history. But I'm genuinely interested in your outcomes, what you've done in those roles. So it's not about saying I'm X such and such company. It's like, what did you do? And ultimately, when you're part of a team, you're not the only one achieving those things. So I want to know about, how did you participate in that? What was your outcomes? And then ultimately, what's your peripheral activities? Who are you connected with? Who are you talking about? What are you interested in? And what have you engaged with? So a great example is just to see whether someone's put up a Medium post, and have they written a genuine piece of thought leadership about a topic that they're passionate and interested about. And it might not be to do anything with fintech. It might to do with something that they're really passionate about, mental health or advocacy or human rights or women in leadership or any topic. It's about showing genuine thought leadership in terms of what you do and what you care about. It's not just about saying, I have a job, I have a title, I get paid lots of money, so give me a job. I think we're beyond that.
Now, 5 years ago, or close to 5 years ago, you put on a meetup event. I think I went to the second one, and we kind of became friends since then. And it was real early days of insurtech, real early days of fintech as well. When you look back over this last 5 years, Brenton, what would you say now is your kind of general view of fintech in Australia?
I'm super proud. I remember those days as well. And, number one, it's just super proud to see the numbers that are being rattled around in terms of company valuations, the amount of people that are working, the work that Fintech Australia is doing, and Beck has done a wonderful job in terms of really leading Fintech Australia over the last couple of years. And I talk about it's no longer like the school disco where you've got the boys and the girls in each corner of the room having the dance over by themselves. I genuinely feel like fintech is an industry. It's no longer just an ecosystem that talks about. It's not just stone and chalk anymore. There's many places that people aggregate and congregate. There's many conversations. There's the fact that I co-founded InsurTech Australia with a bunch of people, and now that's a whole industry and ecosystem in and of itself. The fact that there's these standalone groups now, it's not just about what it was in the day where kind of Fintech Sydney and Fintech Melbourne were the two groups that you had to interact with. Now there's plenty. So I'm really proud to see that and to have been part of kind of building the communities and just be part of organizations to do that. And the other thing is I think Fintech has got a voice, like the government and Treasury, and particularly in the consumer data right and open banking space that we play. It's incredible to see that, we're accepted in these conversations. It's no longer like we're on the little kids' table at the end with our small knives and forks, and you got to sit down there. It's not like that anymore. And it's incredible to be part of that and to see it grow.
It almost feels as if, kind of fintech now, here in Oz anyways, the blueprint for the startup ecosystem as a whole as to how to engage successfully with government and regulators, because we've got the PM, we've got the Treasurer. I think they're all big fans of, not just big fans, but I think big believers in fintech really kind of being a huge opportunity for Australia as a nation.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, and the digital economy strategy by the Prime Minister and Minister Hume in particular, I think is an incredible example of what they're looking to achieve. And the consumer data right is a fundamental underlying pillar of how they will endeavour to achieve that. We can't do anything without our technology instruments. Like, we're so connected. It's no longer about being offline. Everything's online and digital, a couple of buzzwords. But, I think it's going to enable a significant change. As I said, you change the rules and you change the game that we play. And to me, this isn't about not needing banks. Open banking, let's be clear, isn't about not needing banks anymore. It's just saying that banks should be really good at what they do at being banks, and tech companies can be really good about being tech companies. And we got to a dangerous point, which, pre-Royal Commission, where these very large financial services institutions were doing everything for everybody. And that's when we ended up getting into these conflicting situations whereby, you're trying to trade off what's good and bad and these risks versus profit and these sorts of things. So I think not only does open banking and technology more so enable that change, it's ultimately just results in better outcomes for the customer. Trusted, fair choice, competition.
Absolutely. Now, from where you sit, which fintech's got you most excited right now, and why, other than TrueLayer, of course?
I'm really excited what the guys at Stake are doing in trying to help people trade with the US market. It's incredibly hard building a global company in multiple markets, and I think the guys are doing a great job tackling that, because it's such a big market to get into. And I think Dan and the team are doing a great job.
Oh, it's amazing, right? I remember actually I was chatting to Dan about 6 months back, and I said, Dan, remember back in like 2011 when I used to hassle you for, accounting roles in insurance businesses, and I look at where you are now, and it's just phenomenal, right? To see the for me the untapped talent that we've got in Australia, and that when they're given an opportunity or they just go out and do something, how that potential gets unleashed. It's kind of the biggest frustration that I've got, that we keep looking at all of these other jurisdictions like the UK and the US with envy, thinking that they've somehow got superior talent, when I think, all they've got is scale. There's no difference in the talent at all. Absolutely. I think there's the hunger and the need to go and do something ultimately that creates. And unfortunately, I think the way remuneration is structured, particularly in the financial service industry, it breeds apathy, and it breeds just continuing and repeating and protecting your patch, right? And it's not until you go out and you take a risk and you say, hey, look, and this calculated risk, of course, I had to do that at one point in my career as well, which was you need to find a safe landing pad. But you can't just walk straight out of a financial services role and expect to get paid $500,000. It's just, it's not going to happen. That's not how you add value. Getting paid that isn't kind of how it works. So, it does
take people like, I've done it. Dan is a great example. People stepping out and saying, "Hey, I want to take a risk, and I believe in these things." So, for me, getting into InsurTech was a great example. I, previously hadn't had any insight in insurance, but when I joined MetLife as the head of innovation there, I got to see the inside of what an insurance company looks like, and then I knew what needed to change, and that's when I joined InsurTech companies, as well as setting up InsurTech Sydney and then InsurTech Australia, was because I knew the power of what technology could do.
Now we're going to wrap up, but before we do, what does the future hold for TrueLayer here in Australia?
I hope exciting things, of course. We've recently just got our 2 key licenses across the accredited data recipient and AFSL.
Fantastic.
And that's just really going to help us build our capabilities out. So over the next 12 months, it's building the team and localizing our product such that our Australian and global clients can access essentially open banking in Australia across both data and payments. And we're super excited about, as talked about how important the rules of the game are at the moment. A big part of what we do and what we bring is TrueLayer's 5 years of experience in UK and Europe under PSD2. So, and doing this, and we're really about supporting and growing the broader community and the ecosystem around open banking, as well as the regulations. So we've got some exciting rules that are changed through the future directions payment system review that is underway, and plenty of exciting nerdy things that are happening in payments and the consumer data right.
Fantastic. And if people want to find out more about how they can potentially partner with TrueLayer, what's the best way for them to reach out to you?
Yeah, just connect with me on LinkedIn. It'd be great to hear from you and learn more about your business and how we can use open banking to help better serve your customers.
And if there's anybody listening who thinks that they might want to work at TrueLayer, who's the best person to get in touch with? Absolutely.
Shoot me a note, connect with me, and you can also connect with our talent team. But connect with me on LinkedIn, and it'd be great to catch you and meet you and have a think through about your interaction and how you like to chat. And a great example for me, we recently hired an analyst in our team, Kevin, who's a last year law grad, corporate finance grad, and he shot me an incredible LinkedIn message, which told me exactly about why he thought open banking was going to change what was going to happen in Australia, and how he thought he could be part of it, and how he'd love to come in and essentially just do whatever he could do to help us do what we need to do in Australia. And it was such a refreshing perspective.
Oh, nice work, Kevin. I love it.
And, whilst, LinkedIn messages sometimes don't work, I'd say, I can't respond to everything, as I'm sure you get as well, Dexter. But what I'd say is it was that genuine interest and humility that he showed, which was about, hey, I want to be a part of this, and let me know how I can help. And he's got some incredible skills, and he's incredibly talented. And, we're lucky to have him.
Awesome. Well, Brenton, it's been fantastic to have you on the show. Thanks for joining us. Well done to everybody at TrueLayer on, fantastic work so far, and really excited about this next 12 months.
Thank you, Dexter. We really appreciate it, and thank you for your support.
And you can connect with me, Dexter Cousins, on LinkedIn and Twitter. For early access to new shows and updates on the latest exclusive opportunities through Tier 1 people, subscribe to our newsletter by visiting the Fintech Chatter page on LinkedIn. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed today's show, remember to press follow on your favorite podcast player, and please consider leaving us a review. It really does help me in bringing in great guests and help fintech fans like you discover the show. Fintech Chatter is presented by Tier 1 people, leaders in fintech executive search. We'll help you launch, scale, and innovate by delivering world-class talent. And you can find out more at tier1people.com. Until the next episode, stay safe